Where do I go? What will I be? It's who I am. What will they see? Maybe I pray. Yeah. At the end of my days, yeah. What will they say? What will they say?
Welcome back, y'all. We're just going to jump right in halfway through the previous episode, part 2, episode 24, whatever you want to call it. We'll call it episode 24. But the reason I'm speaking is just because we're going to hop halfway into that previous interview that we had that we're piggybacking off of, where Kristi's going to talk a lot about victorious living, what that means, what it is, what their mission is, where they're headed, and I'll provide a link on that too as well. And again, just now we're kind of going into what Kristi is doing what others won't do. Started off doing what others can't do, but now what others won't do, and what more of us need, I think, to honestly step up to the plate and do, and go to places we don't want to go to. So I'll cut that short, but we'll just hop right in. Appreciate y'all's support. Thanks for listening.
Oh yeah.
I do feel like we're skiing and we're at the World Championship, Masters, just balling out on the water, but it seems like your relationship with Christ is definitely becoming a thing. And then over here we have this prison ministry that's here, so like somewhere it's gonna meet these two, where we are now. So like, what point you hung up your skis? Which, first of all, when you hung up, do you miss it?
I miss being on the water.
You don't ski anymore at all?
My body's
wicked. It's
toast. Yeah. And so I miss, like last week I got to go out and wake surf.
So you can do that.
Boat. Yeah, but my back has been jacked for 3 days,
right.
Just going 8 mile an hour behind.
Yeah.
So just 35 years of playing tug of war with the boat and all those crashes and things, it's taken a toll. But yeah, I love it. I miss, like, I live on the Tar River, or when I'm walking out at Lake Kristi and I'm like, I wish I could just go out there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah,
and just carve that morning glassy water and the smoke, not the smoke, but the steam, fog.
Water, yeah.
It's the smell of gas coming out the back. That's weird.
Oh, dang, just everything.
Oh, I just miss it. Being out there with my husband and being coached and learning things. But do I miss, and I even miss the tournaments too. I do, but I don't miss it so much that it's like at the forefront. I mean,
it's not like, oh, those are the days, kind of missing it.
No, it's like, I know where I am now is where I'm supposed to be. And so how did I get to where I am now is kind of the question you brought up. So towards the end of my career, I this wasn't something that I just like, let me ski my way out of here. It was my body fell apart. Like my pelvis had to get reconstructed. I had 16 surgeries and I was just really struggling at the end. And it was frustrating mentally because I could not do what I knew I could do. My body physically couldn't do it. And the ligaments on my hips, they were gone. So I needed major pelvis reconstruction.
Yeah, how old were you at the time when you're basically stepping out?
I was 34 when I had that reconstruction.
You probably had the body of maybe a 60, 70-year-old, I'd imagine.
I
mean, as far as just that mental, just the physical beating.
Physical,
yeah.
Yeah. And so I realized that it was coming to an end. And that was when, through all those surgeries and things, my faith had really become founded on my life on the foundation of the Word and my relationship with the Lord. And I realized that all those years that I had been in the sport, people knew I was a Christian. And that wasn't hidden, but the Lord challenged me. He's like, you've been so faithful to give me credit for the wins, because I'd have the fish on my ski. I'd stand up on ESPN and say, I want to give God the glory for this win, which is confusing for people. They're like, okay, did God let you win? And
it's just, I do get,
yeah.
It's so true.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't taking the glory. It wasn't about saying, God let me win. It was about everything that I am and everything that I have and any good in me. I just want to glorify Him and not myself.
Right.
So I think that's why a lot of people say that. But the Lord challenged me. He's like, you've always given me credit, but you've never once told somebody how they could know the one you give credit to. I had never shared my faith in a way to invite someone else to have it because I was so afraid they would think I was weird.
Yeah, right.
Or they would reject me was probably the base of it, or make fun of me. It's always that self-preservation thing.
You're trying to be like a cool Christian.
I want to be cool.
Yeah, right.
I want to be liked. That's been an addiction too, is people pleasing. And so the Lord began to work me and show me what a wonderful opportunity I had through this sport to share my faith. So I started holding church services. And all I did was, we're going to meet under the Michelob Dry Bud Light Tour tent or whatever, the hospitality tent.
Oh, wow.
8 o'clock Sunday morning before the first kickoff of the event. Put them on the portalets, inside of the portalets, because everybody goes to the portalet, outside and inside.
Wow.
And people would come before the tournament.
Uh-huh.
And I realized, here we are under a beer tent. Nobody's drinking beer, of course.
Right.
Under the beer tent, in our bathing suits. I always thought you had to wear a dress to worship the Lord. We're Baptist, Methodist. We are Lutheran, Catholic, Pentecostal, on and on. And I realized my denomination's not the only one going to heaven.
Yeah.
Like, this was an eye-opener. God used that tent and our attire. I mean, we weren't standing there in half naked, but
Right.
we're in T-shirts, we're
Right.
the board shorts. And it was about coming together for the sole purpose of worshiping God in a place that we didn't have to go. We'd come out of the hotel room. We didn't have to get to the site early. We were there because we wanted to be there. And we wanted to come together. And we realized where two or more are gathered, he showed up under that tent. And it changed my life. And so I started being in charge of, with a couple other of the pro skiers. I was like, hey, we're going to be so-and-so next week. Who's going to do music? Who's going to do this?
Oh, wow.
And it became, people knew every Sunday we were going to have this. If you wanted to come, join us. So fans would come, athletes would come, officials would come, sponsors would come. And there are some events, like at the Masters, we would have 300 or 400 people
Dang.
show up, and it would be the highlight of the weekend was coming, and the athletes would share. They weren't trained ministers, but we would share our testimonies or share what we're learning. And so it was beautiful.
Yeah, right.
And so the Lord used that, and it started being about relationships. And I found out as I stepped out, other believers started stepping out, because we realized we weren't the only ones. Everybody thought I'm the only one. But now we'd sit on the shore and we'd talk about what we were learning. And other skiers would come over, like, explain, why are y'all going to church in the morning? And then if they were hurt, just go pray with them or ask, not trying to force something.
Right.
And so it became very relational. So I started a water sports outreach towards the end of my career. Well, in 2003 was the first event. It's called In His Weights.
I saw that.
And it was all about using the platform of water sports to share my love for skiing, but also my love for people and for the Lord. And we started having events all over the country. The first year we had like 4, next year 9, then it was 30 some, now it's 50 some, now it's like 60 or 70 events across the country, internationally, using water sports to introduce people to the life-changing power of Jesus Christ. So this is growing, and this is touching the lives of at-risk youth all over the country. And it was amazing. But what was happening is, because I had such a platform in the sport, and because I had such a name in the sport, I knew what God was showing me he wanted to do. This ministry was of him. But I was trying to make the ministry work. Because I thought I had to be the performer, the producer, the one to make it happen, because I didn't want to let God down. Again, my heart was right, but it was a burden he never meant for me to carry.
But it goes back to that fierce competitiveness.
The fierce competitiveness, the one not wanting to let somebody down, not wanting to fail. And I didn't want to fail God. And I knew too much is given, much is required, that verse. And I was like, man, I've been given a lot. I've been given a lake. I've been given awesome parents. I've been given this opportunity to travel the world, all these experiences, all these victories. Now I have to give. And I gave so much that I got physically sick for a decade.
For real?
For real. And so I had all sorts of chronic fatigue, all these Lyme disease, all these different things. And I'd go to doctors, tens of thousands of dollars of medical bills, and people say, we can't find anything wrong with you. It was stress.
That was just eating you alive.
Eating me alive. Exhaustion, trying to balance being a mom, and at the same time, I'm retired, We've got this growing ministry, this amazing husband, a 7-year-old. We adopted a 2 and 4-year-old from Russia.
Oh, wow.
I'm physically exhausted, body's in pain, transitioning from being Kristi the skier to mom of 3 all of a sudden. And I was a mess for probably a decade. I could put on the game face outside.
Yeah, right.
So really on my husband, my poor husband, knew what was the trials I was going through, how bad I felt.
Do you think it was just that transition of a season that was just so difficult,
It's
like trying to
hard.
figure out how to go from one life to another?
Yeah, and a lot of people struggle with that,
Yeah.
whether you're retiring from business or your kids leave the house, you're an
Yeah.
empty nester, or you get divorced and you don't have that identity as a spouse, or you retire. Athletes do it all the time. All of a sudden you're not a collegiate athlete because you didn't make it to the pros. Now what?
Yeah.
Your whole life's been volleyball or soccer or baseball, and now it's or military. You know, you've been over fighting a war and you're with these people, and then you come home and trying to adjust. So it was an adjustment period. Physically, I was exhausted. And anyway, so during this time, one of the men that would come to the church services, his name was Bill. He was a professional boat driver. He would share his testimony under the beer tent with us and share about his faith. Well, he has a moral failure, gets sentenced to 15 years in prison. And so my first thought was, I've got to protect the ministry. Because people are calling, how could you have had him a part of your ministry? He did this thing. And I felt like Peter. Now I look back, I was like, Peter, I don't hardly know the man. Bill who? I mean, I knew him, but I really didn't know him.
Yeah, right.
And I was like, he just shared at our ministry, but he's in this material here. I was like, well, it was a testimony, you know.
That's
So he goes to prison, and the whole sport, except for 1 or 2 people, maybe forgot about Bill, including myself. And at first it was because I thought I needed to protect the ministry. And then I just got doing ministry and forgot about Bill. And 7 years later, he writes me. And so this is how I ended up in prison. I get this letter, and I didn't even recognize the name. I was like, William? I don't even know a William. It was Bill.
Isn't that crazy?
And I started reading it. I was like, oh, this is Bill. He's writing me I didn't even know what the hashtag, or because it was his federal
like
inmate
the ID
number.
Yeah, right.
ID. I'd never seen that. I'm like, why is someone from this? I thought it was like
junk, or
I didn't know what it was. So I open it up, and it's this letter, and the first thing he says is, I am so sorry for the harm I caused your ministry.
You said 7 years later? Wow.
And my heart just melted. And this is when I read this, and then it started stirring. Go visit Bill. Go visit Bill. So I talked to my husband. I said, I'm going to be in the Miami area soon. What do you think? He's like, if you feel the Lord. I have a husband that it wasn't like my wife's going to visit another man. It's like, he saw the bigger picture.
Right.
He knew this was a ministry related thing. Of course, he was invited to go. He turned that down. He's like, I trust you. You go. It's all good. So in that meeting with Bill, I saw several things. One, the power of a visit. That visit lit him up.
I bet.
He had not had a visitor for about a year because he was from Texas. He had been moved to Florida because he had been a cop. So he had to get put where he had not put people in prison. And he got maybe one visitor a year in those 15 years that he was there. I think maybe he had 7 or 8 visitors actually during that time. So I saw the power of visit. I was sitting in that room, reception room, with all these other family members, and I realized the humanity behind bars.
Yeah.
These were sons, these were husbands, these were daddies, these were uncles, these were boyfriends, these were granddaddies. It rocked me. And I had this internal dialogue with the Lord. I tell people it's like someone opened a curtain. And that's really what the word revelations is, letting you see the future. It's letting you see something. It was like I had a revelation of God's love, a place that he wanted me to minister. But the thing is, I didn't know anything about that world. So when I left there, I said, all right, Lord, I know you've given me in his wakes. I know I'm called to do that. But if you're calling me to go minister, I'm going to hear. To take the message of hit it, which is what? It's not about perfection. It's about connecting to the right power source and saying, hit it.
Yeah, right.
And getting up again and learning why you fell and making the adjustments. And so I knew this was a place where God's like, go help people get up, because I'm really good at getting up.
For a second, I love, because I've read about Hit It for a couple of days now, and I love that, because so I grew up on Lake Erie up in Ohio in wakeboarding and skiing. I might have been the best from the boat, but our boat was very small. And so I wasn't competitive at all. But the whole thing on wakeboarding too is going back to, I'm just thinking about your power source. And if we equate God to the boat, it's the whole thing of wakeboarding and getting up is to don't try. Just hold on and let the boat do the work.
Right.
And so I think, especially for people who aren't familiar with skiing or what what you're saying is I skied a little bit, mostly wakeboarding, but it's if I tried to pull myself out of the water,
you're gonna fall.
And I feel silly telling you this as if you've never. I mean, you're a world champion skier.
Well,
I'm telling you. Let me tell you how to get up on a wakeboard. No, but it's every time I tried to lift myself up onto the board on my own doing, it always would just, it wouldn't work out. And I've told that to my kids, as we've a little bit taught them, is just lean back and all you got to do is just hold on. But as soon as you try to do it yourself, you're going to fail. And I think that is I just see the relation so much, what you're talking about with Hit It, just go.
And what's really cool is all the power of the boat becomes your power when you don't fight against it. Mm-hmm. And so why could I go around buoys that were physically impossible to reach because of the boat's power?
Yeah.
And all I did was get in position and hold it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with God. The same power that raised Jesus Christ from the dead, it lives in us.
Yeah.
But it lives in us through a relationship with Jesus, which is like the rope that connects to the power of the boat, God. And so, I knew this was a place that people have been saying hit it to a lot of things. They'd been saying hit it to drugs. They've been saying hit it to success, and it got misdirected. They're all trying to find a place to belong, to have worth, and to have purpose. And the Lord's help them shift their focus here to see there is a place they belong. Right. There is a place they have worth and purpose, and a place of where they can still live even though they're confined.
Right.
So when I left there, I said, I'll go, but you open the doors, because by then I'm 10 years into Ennis Wakes. I'm 10 years into sickness, of getting ahead of God so many times. And if you get ahead of a boat, what happens?
Yeah, you're done.
You sink.
Yeah.
So I was that's why I named it In His Wakes. I should have learned right at the get-go that it's you stay in the safety of His wakes and let Him lead. And I didn't do that. And so recently I was because I just have some conversations with God, and it's not this audible voice. It is this conversation. And I was just praying. I was why'd you take me out of water sports? Because it was my life.
Yeah.
And I had such an influence, and I loved teaching people to ski and sharing the word and all that kind of stuff through that avenue. And he said, I heard, to save you from yourself. Because in the sport of water skiing, you had a name. You didn't need my name. You knew the lay of the land. You had the connections, and you felt the responsibility of making it all happen, and you about killed yourself doing it. Not going and committing suicide, but I physically was killing my body. Yeah. My mind was everything, a mess.
I mean, that's a car accident when you take it real bad.
Yeah.
When you fall real bad.
You fall bad, but it's, not only that, it's just you've worked yourself to death. That was the thing. I was carrying a burden I wasn't meant to carry, and His burden is easy. His yoke is easy, and His burden is light. And so He's so I had to put you in a place you didn't know a person, you didn't know a thing, you had no connections, you had one name, the name of Jesus, the name above all names. And with that, yes, saying, I will go, but you open the doors. It was a supernatural invitation into prison. I mean, the phone started ringing the following week. I didn't tell anybody about my experience or my prayer. The next week after my yes, God, I will go help people get up in prison. You make it happen. The phone starts ringing. Will you be a platform speaker? Will you come in and speak at our graduation ceremony in this prison? Hey, Kristi, this is the Florida DOC. We just got this magazine, Victorious Living, that you published, because I'd been publishing it for 2 years, didn't know why. It was just the idea wouldn't go away.
So it was a generic, no, I shouldn't say generic magazine, but it wasn't targeted for prison.
No,
for
it was just, it's real stories, real people, real stories, real hope. I just knew I was supposed to tell people stories. I didn't know why I was doing it. Even my kids would say, Mom, why are you spending all this time doing it? God was preparing it for prisoners. I didn't know it. That's why he says, be faithful where you are now.
Or for I know the plans I have for you, too, is the other thing I was thinking about when you said that.
I didn't know the plans
like all
I
these
have
different
for you.
pieces are going on.
I didn't know. I just knew. All I knew in that moment is I was supposed to be writing stories. And I was faithful doing it. And he took the magazine and somehow put it in the hands. I still don't know to this day how it got in their hands. And they said, we would like this in every prison in the state of Florida. Can you make that happen? I'm like, how much is this going to get paid for? But I said, sure, we'll send them. We'll print more and we'll send more. Get me the addresses. Now this is in thousands of facilities across America. We're on prison tablets. We have correspondence, mentorship program, reentry programs, trauma-informed care through prison tablets. Close to 2 million views this year alone of me and one of our other team members sharing the Word of God and trauma-informed care with a biblical perspective on a camera. And it goes on prison tablets. By the end of the year, we'll be on 1 million prison tablets. Where, I was in Wyoming last week speaking at a drug treatment program, and this lady raised her hand. She goes, I used to watch you in prison on the tablets, and you taught me the Word of God.
What'd that feel like?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
But see, I didn't know. All I did was say yes.
Yeah.
And I didn't know I'd be going into the maximum security prisons, walking in at that time. Everybody around me's got stab-proof vest on, and here I go, walking in. I am not qualified for it. People would say, you talk to guys? First of all, it's a denomination thing where I was from. Women should never speak really publicly to a man. So that was really hard because I knew what God had called me to do.
Yeah, right.
And I could see the fruitfulness. But I'm not pastoring them. I'm not trying to lead them. I'm sharing my story.
Nothing more.
Which is what Jesus told Mary to do.
Yeah.
Hey, go and tell the disciples. What did he tell the lady at the well? Hey, I know what you've done. Hey, she accepts Jesus and goes back and tells. That's all I'm doing is telling.
Yeah, right.
What God has done for me. And inviting you to connect to a power source who won't leave you or forsake you even for a moment. And so it is so humbling to see what God's done because I know I didn't do it.
One thing, I visited the local, which I know is just the jail here, maybe about a year ago, and talked to some guys, which was the same thing. Like we drive by prisons, and you usually don't see anybody outside. And I think we're always fascinated by like the barbed wire, and you see the basketball court, and you're like, man. And I think even you see shows like 60 Days In, and I think we have this weird fascination with prisons. Yeah. But I remember when I stepped back in there and then went into their cell with, I think there's like 6 or 7 guys, part of the Sharps program. And
that's where I go every Thursday.
Yeah, that's why. That's why I figured I heard you say Thursday. It's like, all of a sudden it became very real and like almost an out of body experience. Cause then you realized you heard a lot of them did have parents, and it really like it gave me life, but then it really broke my heart because they might only have somebody visit on a Thursday. That's it.
And like, now since COVID, it's all digital.
Which is, can I just say, is so dumb. I mean,
but the problem is the workforce is so low.
Right.
So,
right.
This is one thing. I mean, our ministry has been completely to the incarcerated, but the Lord's showing me those that are working in the system too.
Yeah.
Those men and women that are showing up there day in and day out.
Yeah.
They're exhausted.
That's a lot.
I learned a stat the other day. It's like 11 officers a year are killed by a prisoner. So we always think, and that's what we hear. But 3 officers a week take their life because of the hopelessness, because of the darkness, because they've had to dehumanize people, that they've had to be in, to safeguard themselves, cut off emotions, and getting paid a lot of times minimum wage, working 4 double shifts a week. And so the Lord has just started opening my eyes to, it's not just to this one group, it's to the field of corrections, to bring some light into the darkness and some hope and unification, I guess, to remind people through these stories that JC is a person.
Right.
He did some horrible things. but people did horrible things to him too. Now JC is being restored and helping other people be restored. There is hope for that person, but also sharing stories of former officers whose names used to be, their nickname was Lucifer, because she was so evil and she hated her life and she hated the people and treated the incarcerated with such hate. They called her Lucifer, who has now been transformed by God and now goes back in and loves on people that she hated. They love her.
Have you ever seen the movie Crash?
No.
Okay, so Crash it reminds me of that. So it basically follows like 6 people, I think. I mean, there's black, white, Muslim, basically, and it sorts through the differences. It starts with a cop who's very disgruntled, and he pulls over a black guy.
Is it a documentary or like a
No,
movie?
it's a movie.
Oh, okay.
It's probably 10 years old, and it's phenomenal. But anyways, I'll keep it short. He pulls over like a black guy, and instantly he treats him differently because he's a black guy, because he's just too close to his profession, and he's started to see things through jaded eyes. And then it follows the life of the black guy, who it shows the kind of the disadvantages he has. And then it follows like a Hispanic person. And anyways, it shows how people become so jaded and so filled with darkness sometimes, depending what their environment is. And he had just been a cop too long. And he started off a really good cop and then he turned into a bad cop. But then anyways, it shows like how, I'm doing an awful job, but it shows how we're all connected, but how we all kind of protect ourselves by these stereotypes. And so I could totally see how someone who's a prison guard, I remember I was there for one day, for 2 hours, and I've walked others since, like, changed, and I want to go back, but then the other part of me is like, it was just heavy. It was heavy, but there's no one else going. I mean, other than, I know you guys are going and there's other groups going.
You're coming in on a Thursday with me.
I'll do it. I'll do it. But I just remember, and then you just learn their names and stuff, and you're just like, man,
they're people.
They could have been us, any of us. Some of us just didn't get caught, I mean,
do you know how many people I meet, like, well, they went out and they celebrated, and they got in a car, and they shouldn't have been driving, or they were on their phone texting and hit somebody and killed them. Yep. I'm sorry, that could be any of us these days.
Amen. That's, right.
So, there's just so many people, I would say 85% at least are drug-related, full-blown addiction. So you're trying to incarcerate. We're going down this whole rabbit hole right now, but the reality is God called me to a place that I didn't know, to show me his heart for people I'd forgotten or didn't even know existed or care to know or had judged. And it's just been a beautiful experience of learning what the heart of God feels like and having empathy and compassion for people, and also to see how God can use you in places that you're in the natural, like by the world standards, not equipped for. And that's what I was going to say a while ago. People are like, you go in and speak, the guys listen to you, or the women listen to you, because you've never been arrested. You've had good parents. You were never raped. You were never these things, addicted to drugs. Why would anybody? And trust me, I had the same question. The first time I stood up, and I'm following a lady who just spoke and shared her horrific story, that I'm like, people have been through that at 2 or 3 years old.
Right.
I had no idea. And I just looked and I just broke down crying, and I said, I don't know why any of you would listen to me. I have not experienced your life. And and this is what I always say, I don't for a minute expect you to think or even think that I know what you have been through.
Right.
Because I don't. But here's what I know. I know that I wouldn't have made it with the family that I had if it not were for the Lord. And I know that he has highlighted you to me, that he loves you. And there's an anointing. People often don't know what that word means. It means that God gives you a supernatural gifting to do what he's called you to do. You're anointed to do what you're doing right now. I'm anointed to go into, it means God's power works through you. I'll walk up, open my mouth, and stuff will start coming out that is not from Kristi. It is not prepared. What is prepared in my heart is the word of God. And I'm like, Lord, you bring it out. This is what I planned to say, but you change it. And he does every time. And it keeps me in total reliance on him. There's times I'm scared to death. And there's times the enemy will tell me, and I know it's the enemy that'll say, nobody wants to hear from you. Why are you even going to get up there? You should just let so-and-so speak today. And fear will start coming up, and doubt, and people like concern what people are going to think. And
that's so true.
The Lord showed me later, he's like, no, I have called you to this. If you let fear back you down, and if you shirk your responsibility and just put it on somebody else, it's not going to be good. And not that he's going to punish me, but I'm going to lose that power. I'm going to lose that place. So what happens is I push through the fear and I say, hit it, God. And you stand up in a place you don't belong, just like Moses, a stutterer being a mouthpiece. I'm a water skier being a mouthpiece in prison.
That's what's so, and the thing that I think about too is I remember thinking, someone would tell me, so they get out of this jail, or if they go to prison, they get out of prison, they basically come to an intersection, there's a convenience store. They have a choice. Can they buy, if they want to buy a 40, make a call to one of their dealers before, or who else do they go to? Well, we would call our parents and have them pick us up, and we'd get re-entered back in. I did see you had the re-entry thing, but it's like, they were at a literal and figurative crossroads when they get out of jail. And like a lot of times they go to the convenience store or wherever it is, because that's the only, number one, I think that's the only life they know. And they don't have what we had, a stable background, or we don't, it's so foreign.
And even if they have great intentions and want to move forward, I mean, I'm seeing it played out right now. And even though we try to assist with some reentry through connections, I don't have a house I can just open up and put somebody in. And the reality is, if you have a sexual offender charge, which can be for a variety of things. I mean, our mind immediately goes to the most horrific, disgusting thing you can think. It can be something that's fairly minor. Not minor, maybe an 18-year-old, 19-year-old with an 18-year-old or 17-year-old. Something like that situation. It's now a sexual offender, even though it's consensual.
That's insane.
You go relieve yourself outside on the corner. You've exposed
and
something.
you have this tattoo on your forehead, essentially.
So now you're an SO. And so in Florida, what do you get if you're an SO? You get a tent, because there's no apartments that you can go live in. People will not let you come near their neighborhoods. You cannot qualify, or you've got all these fees you have to pay. So you can't even get your license because you got to pay court fees. This is for anybody.
Right. And with what money?
With what money? You've earned 15 cents an hour, 10 cents an hour, whatever in prison. And so, and you've sent that home, or you've used it for commissary for inflated price things like shampoo or whatever, or soap. And so I've learned a lot, because I thought, these are bad people. This is what I thought, that have done bad things, that are doing their time, and they can make better choices. It's not set up like that.
You almost made me think too, as you're saying, it's almost like being an inmate now is modern day leprosy.
It is.
Especially when you get out.
Yeah, you get out and you can't get a job. You can't. And then let's say you have an addiction. You've been incarcerated. You haven't been treated for this disease and these behaviors and this trying to fix this pain that's in your heart. And it's the only way you know to get through life is to go numb it. I can't even say no to a candy. Like, I walk past that candy and it's like, think about the chemical of sugar and think about that multiplied.
Yeah. I mean, you have a Krispy Kreme red light right down the road from where you guys are. You can't, I mean, and what's crazy is all addiction is rooted in trauma too. And so like, it's not just, I like cocaine or, whatever it is, whatever your drug of choice is. It's always rooted in, it's never in isolation. I always used to think it was. Well,
that's why we have a trauma-informed care counselor now on our staff.
Incredible.
That is bringing it through videos, because we can't get in to personally visit and we can't be everywhere. But so she has these videos that help people find the trauma that's been hidden, but then work through it in a safe way, because she's like, we just can't be unleashing people's traumas in there and they don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah, right.
So we're having to be very careful how we help people process it. It's not counseling, but processing this stuff through a biblical lens, helping people understand their fears and walking through forgiveness. And it's very exciting, the opportunities that we have before us to do that, through tablets, through live feeds, through all sorts of stuff, curriculums that can be done on tablets, through our correspondence. But it's like the work is endless.
Yeah, right. I could probably talk to you for another 3 hours or 4 hours
about it. Put this in 20 minutes. And I would really love, hopefully, we can break this down, but include it on the tablets because we've really talked about some wonderful things that our fan would love to hear too.
There's a great book called Ear Hustle. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a lady who worked at San Quentin and Penitentiary, and she started a podcast with just inmates and actually had them develop a studio in the prison, where it was a prison-run podcast where basically the men would just get on there and just share their stories. And like, you have an endless amount of stories in there, And anyways, so I thought that was really cool. Ear Hustle was the book. It was phenomenal.
Well, I just think we can close with a challenge to your listeners to take time this week to find out someone else's story.
That's good.
I had someone recently, and they're godly people. They I would never talk to a homeless person. It's a person with a story.
It's someone's
It's
kid.
not going to get up and bite you, or, I like to say, hey, how you doing? What's your name? And, it's just.
Do you think deep down we don't even want to know their name, though? Because then it becomes more real?
I think a lot of it is we don't know how to help, and we don't feel like we're doing enough. But just acknowledging that you're seen and that somebody cares and wants to do, like, a person is not just a homeless person, or it's not just, hey, that person of that race or whatever. I mean, that's how we define everybody. No, that person has a name. That's Jose. Yeah. Or that's so-and-so. And they have a name, and they have a family, and they have a story. Find it out.
And I always think, too, and not always, because sometimes I don't want to think this, but I almost think, who hurt you? Like,
there's a why behind everybody's what.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's a lot of people who, they think you're going to hurt them. I mean, there's something below the surface. Like, they might be cold to you at first, and you're thinking, well, they just don't like me. No, they're afraid you're going to hurt them.
They're protecting themselves.
They're protecting themselves, which is what we're all doing at the end of the day.
That's right.
We're all in survival mode.
Yeah, right. And just painting a picture, essentially.
Yeah.
I agree with your challenge, is just try to find someone each day just to learn something from their story, and just talk to someone you wouldn't really want to talk to, because that's what you're doing, and it's awesome. And so I love what you're doing. I'm going to put a link on there, everything, too. Your website's phenomenal, by the way. There's a ton of information on there.
Thank you.
But yeah,
there's
I appreciate you taking the time.
Stories galore. If you want to hear some people's stories, just click on there.
I was already going down it's awesome. Well, keep up the good work, and I appreciate you hopping on.
You too.